It's Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's time to talk about some wrestling news. We have some headlines from all over the place concerning some good news, there's some bad news as well, but it's all very newsworthy stuff. So, without any further ado, let's take a look at those headlines. First of all, the original winner of the 2020 Royal Rumble has been revealed. Next up, more WWE personnel have tested positive for COVID-19. And finally, we get an update on the SummerSlam 2020 location. So first of all, we all know that the winners of this year's two Royal Rumble matches were Charlotte Flair and Drew McIntyre. But now Fightful are reporting that there was an original plan in place for one of those matches and that the winner got changed at the last minute. Fightful are saying that Shayna Baszler was originally planned to win the match and was the betting favourite going into the match, which you may remember at the time. I certainly do, because I remember thinking, wow, it's such a shock when she didn't win. And apparently, the report from Fightful says the decision for Charlotte to win the match was made just hours before the event began. You really have to feel for Shayna there. Shayna was indeed in the match, entering at number 30 and being pretty dominant for a while before eventually getting eliminated by Charlotte en route to her victory. Yeah, that's really a shame for Shayna, especially because, you know, Charlotte's won pretty much everything there is to win in WWE for her, apart from a Royal Rumble, which she did, of course, then win. But Shayna, you know, had only just come up from NXT. In fact, was she even still part of NXT at the time? I think she may have been. So that is a shame, especially when you couple that with the fact that Shayna was apparently originally scheduled to beat Becky Lynch at WrestleMania, and then again plans changed and Becky retained her title. Could this all be indicative of a wider problem regarding Shayna Baszler in WWE? Because over the past few weeks, reports have emerged from various different sources suggesting that Vince McMahon, for whatever reason, has soured on Shayna Baszler and doesn't really see the value in her. If that's true, and if that is the case, that would be a tremendous waste of talent, in my opinion. And not just a big waste of talent, but a waste of time as well, because Shayna was put over huge on NXT. She was a strong, dominant champion. She was beating contestants left, right, and centre to her title, and then hasn't really been utilised to the best of her abilities on Raw, if I'm honest. We all cringed a bit in the build-up to the Becky Lynch match when she turned into a vampire for some reason and bit her and drew blood, and then yeah, nothing came of it because she lost. And since then, we've barely even seen her. And last week, there were some reports as well suggesting that Vince just doesn't get it. He doesn't see the appeal of Shayna Baszler, which to me is not Shayna's fault whatsoever. I think she's a fantastic wrestler and persona and character. I think it's more a case of Vince just not being with the times anymore. If he can't see why Shayna is such a draw, especially in the modern day era of, you know, MMA popularity and all that sort of thing, then I don't know what more she can do. But there is a glimmer, I'll say a glimmer of hope for Shayna Baszler fans out there, because she hasn't been on Raw for a little while, but she has apparently been scheduled to return to WWE TV. In a way. That's because Shayna is said to have wrestled at a recent set of TV tapings at the Performance Center, although this was only for main event. But it was her first appearance since May the 12th, so she'll be appearing for the first time on our screens in almost 2 months. But again, it's main event, not Monday Night Raw. So that's why I say only a glimmer of hope, because how far can you really get on main event? Now over to Pro Wrestling Sheet, who have reported that more people have unfortunately tested positive for COVID-19 in WWE. More WWE personnel have tested positive. Now, apparently the number now totals 30, but no extra names have been reported. So yes, according to Pro Wrestling Sheet, the number of positive results is at least 30, but again, we only know those who've confirmed it themselves on social media in recent days or weeks, such as Renee Young, Jamie Noble, Kayla Braxton, and Adam Pearce. They've all confirmed to have tested positive for COVID. Now, according to the report, WWE has really ramped up its testing after criticism for a very lax attitude, or a perceived lax attitude, in the earlier days. They are now implementing fines, so if you're caught without wearing a mask, then you get a $500 fine. If you then subsequently break that rule again, you get a $1,000 fine for every time you break the rule. And also, as a bit of a sign of WWE's sudden change in attitude regarding this whole thing, apparently, according again to Pro Wrestling Sheet, WWE have done around 1,500 tests since the end of June even. Wow, that is quite a lot in a short space of time. But of course, the wider story is that, you know, Florida itself is unfortunately at the moment quite a hotbed for increased rates of infection in recent days and weeks. and that puts people in danger in WWE and also in AEW. And of course, if you're watching from Florida as well, do make sure to stay safe out there. And now on to some good news. I think it's appropriate to do because Eric from the Viking Raiders and Sarah Logan are expecting their first child. Yes, Raymond and Sarah Rowe, as they are otherwise known, are expecting their first child after announcing it on social media. This comes after last week Sarah Logan was hyping a big announcement saying that she was going to move on to different things for a while, not pro wrestling. But nobody really thought, or at least I didn't, that what she meant was motherhood, which is just such a nice thing. If you've watched that special on YouTube of their wedding, Eric and Sarah Logan's their Viking wedding, it shows what a strong and positive couple they are. And, you know, everybody they interview in that says what a great pair of people they are. So it's impossible not to be happy for them. Logan has said that because obviously she was part of the big swathe of releases that WWE made in April, that was kind of the last thing holding them back because she couldn't wrestle while she was pregnant. Now that she'd been released, apparently they'd been talking about it for a while and they thought, well, now that I'm not wrestling anymore, we might as well try. And I think that's a really nice thing. That's a really good positive situation to emerge out of what on the whole looked to have been a negative one. Sarah was speaking on the Wild and Free TV, hers and Eric's YouTube show, which I guess you can check out if you want to know more updates about her pregnancy. I suppose that's where they're going to be documenting this, but I don't know for certain. Next up, let's talk about the rated R superstar Edge, who of course currently is sadly on the shelf, on the sidelines, after having sustained an injury during that greatest match ever with Randy Orton, which was, to be fair, a very, very good match. Edge was speaking to ESPN and mentioned a few names that he'd want to wrestle when getting back from his injury. He says, I come from this weird time frame where I've been able to work, and then he talks about like the huge variety of wrestlers that he's been fortunate enough to work with. So he says Jerry Lawler, Terry Funk, Ric Flair, teaming with Hulk Hogan, Rick Martel, Bad News Brown, Mr. Perfect, Owen Hart. My gosh, I've been able to get in with all of them. So while a lot of Edge's answers there may have been a lot of other wrestlers' dream matches, he's been there and done that. He's been fortunate enough to have already wrestled so many legendary names in the business. So in his answer here, quite cleverly, he's instead saying, I want to wrestle this new crop of guys. I can't wait to see if I can get in the ring with them. He calls the new generation so athletically gifted, but if I could get in with them and just show them little tweaks here and there to get more mileage out of some of their athleticism, that's exciting to me. He then specified some names that he'd like to wrestle. So first name out of Edge's mouth was Seth Rollins. He put, yeah, Rollins, that's a gimme. There's AJ Styles, who I've never worked with, which seems impossible considering how long they've both worked in the business. Just never, he says, in the same place at the same time. He also mentioned Cesaro, Matt Riddle, Shinsuke Nakamura, and he says, I look at a guy like Ricochet, oh my god, I'd die to get in the ring with him. And I know a lot of us were quite disheartened when news of Edge's injury emerged in the aftermath of that second match against Randy Orton. However, it is quite hopeful to read that and to hear how excited Edge is to potentially mix it up with some of the newer crop of talent once he returns. He seems adamant that, you know, he wants to keep going with this, and I think that's fantastic because when Edge came back, it was similar to when Daniel Bryan came back. It was kind of a very hopeful moment that if you work hard enough, you know, anything's possible, and that's a lovely message to see. Next up, let's talk about SummerSlam, because the location for SummerSlam has been reported and confirmed by various different news sources. I think it may have first been reported by Post Wrestling. It's since been confirmed by PW Insider and Dave Meltzer. It looks to be legit. That's because of a WWE taping schedule that was laid out last week by Post Wrestling, and it seems to have now been confirmed as true, which seems to mean that this year's SummerSlam will emanate from the Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. It's a massive shame, there's no other way of saying it, because obviously SummerSlam was going to be the biggest massive event since WrestleMania, which of course didn't happen the way that any of us envisioned it happening. And it looks like SummerSlam is going to take a similar form, despite hopes, I remember at the time, earlier on, a few months ago, that by the time August rolled round, we'd get to see SummerSlam weekend in all its glory. That does not now seem to be the case. SummerSlam wasn't just going to be one event either, was it? It was going to be SummerSlam weekend in Boston, Massachusetts. We were going to have SmackDown, TakeOver, SummerSlam, Raw. It was going to be a whole sequence of, like, a slightly scaled down WrestleMania weekend. However, in early May, the mayor of Boston, Marty Walsh, cancelled all large gatherings in the city through Labor Day due to the pandemic. A lot quicker action, I'd suggest, than the governor of Florida. Now, John Pollock's initial report has TakeOver scheduled for the Saturday, August 22nd, with SummerSlam the night after. And at the time, he had to be decided written in instead of the location. But now it does seem like that will be the Performance Center, at least for SummerSlam itself. We may see Full Sail used, I guess, for TakeOver. We'll just have to wait and see. But also, he seems to suggest that the go-home editions of Raw and SmackDown will be taped on the prior Monday. So we'll have Raw and SmackDown taped on the Monday, then Raw will go out, and then on the Friday, that pre-taped SmackDown will also air. Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? It's sad that we're not going to get a big pay-per-view weekend again, but what else, I guess, can be done? So, thank you very much for watching. That is it for the news video today. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on any of these stories in the comments section down below. Stay safe out there, keep yourselves positive, and I'll see you very soon.